NBA All-Star Weekend delivers in Charlotte, and both the Longhorns men's and women's team make a push toward March Madness. It is prime hoop season. We will make a comeback to College Press Box right after the break. Greetings! It is Monday night, and I'd like to welcome you to College Press Box. I'm Steve Helwick alongside Thomas Fitch. I hope your NBA All-Star Weekend was as perfect 50, just like Hamidou Diallo's elbow dunk over Shaquille O'Neal. Thomas, what was your favorite part of the All-Star Weekend?
Well, if we're on the subject of dunks, it's got to be Giannis's dunk off the alley-oop or bounce pass, I guess you could say, from Steph Curry. That was pretty sweet.
Speaking of perfect weekends and slam dunks, that describes exactly what the Texas Longhorns did on Saturday, who cruised past Oklahoma State for a 69-57 victory that afternoon. The convincing victory gives the Longhorns 4 wins in 6 tries, but the beginning of the week looked less than optimal for the Longhorns.
Yeah, that's right. After back-to-back double-digit wins, the Horns hosted the Big 12 leading Kansas State Wildcats, trying to get their 3rd win in a row. Let's head down to the Irwin Center for the highlights. And the Minister of Culture, Matthew McConaughey, in the house, trying to give the Horns a win. You know who else trying to give the Horns a win? The Rim, giving Snoop Roach the friendly roll there. Then Courtney Ramey going to find Jericho Sims for the dunk, but McCole Mawian going to get his revenge and win the Battle of Jericho there. We're tied at 24. Later on in the first half, Snoop driving in, through the contact, shot up, shot good. The Horns lead 34-28, but Kansas State would respond. Mike McGurl's going to hit the 3, and the lead is cut to 3. Speaking of 3, the ball is going to make it around to number 3, Courtney Ramey, who hits the 3. The Horns lead 39-35 at the half. Let's go to the second half for some highlights. Mawian again in the paint with the dunk, and Kansas State wouldn't let go of that lead after that, but wouldn't be a Texas highlights without Jackson Hayes' dunk. However, Horns would go on to lose the game. Snoop Roach loses the ball there. The Wildcats go on to win 71-64. Horns fall to 14-11 in conference.
Now we'll bus over to the Frank Irwin Center, where Micah Rodriguez discusses Texas's shortcoming against the current number 23 team in the country.
With the Minister of Culture on hand, the Texas men's basketball team looked to add another upset to their season by sweeping conference leaders, the number 18 Kansas State Wildcats, Tuesday night. Texas got off to a strong start, making 68.4% of 2-point field goals in the first half, with 10 points from Courtney Ramey. The freshman guard was just one component of a dominant Longhorn first half over Kansas State. After halftime, it was a different story. The Horns fell into foul trouble and couldn't connect on shots. The Wildcats would capitalize on this and gained momentum as the game dwindled, leaving Austin with a 71-64 win over Texas.
I mean, we could be any team, but we just got to go out there and just do the details and do the little things.
Those little things include points in the paint and avoiding turnovers.
They've not played a lot of zone. Our guys have been pretty good against zone of late, but it got our guys on their heels.
This loss to Kansas State hurts Texas's home record, but the Longhorns look to bounce back as Big 12 play winds down.
You know, they're really good. I told Wyatt on the radio they got to be the best 14-11, 6-6 team in the country. I think they can do damage in the NCAA tournament.
We cannot and will not change our formula in practice and in preparation. There's a lot of basketball details that we need to, work on.
From the Frank Irwin Center, I am Micah Rodriguez, TSTV Sports.
I am here with hoops expert Sean Mapes to analyze the Texas Longhorns roller coaster of a week, which had 1 win and 1 loss. Let's dig into the mind of Mapes right here. After establishing a solid first-half lead over the Wildcats, why were the Longhorns unable to escape the Frank Irwin Center with a W that night?
Well, I mean, it starts off with the shooting. At tale old as time, Texas basketball wasn't able to shoot the ball well. They only shot 4-19 from 3, and that was 2 of 11 in the second half. That's not how you're going to win basketball games. That really played a part in Kansas State outscoring Texas 36-25 in the second half. And really, I mean, Kansas State, I mean, you said they're one of the best teams in the Big 12, in the conference. they just have more talent. Barry Brown, you can't let him get anything he wants. He was getting anything he wanted all game. Xavier Sneed also got 16 points to go with Brown's 16 points. And you have to force the top players on the opponent to have bad games when you're trying to upset them, and Texas wasn't able to do that.
And you said that the lanes just weren't open for those drives in the second half, but all things were fixed because Texas was presented, although it was an easier opponent, Oklahoma State on Saturday, it just seemed like so many aspects of their game improved and the on-court performance really augmented. So what were the differences from that Kansas State game on Tuesday night to the Oklahoma State game on Saturday night where they won by 12?
Yeah, they shot a little bit better, but I think the biggest difference was just going from playing one of the best teams in the conference to playing one of the worst teams in the conference. I mean, Texas proves they're right in the middle of the conference. I mean, they got 16 points off the bench, so that kind of speaks to the talent differential. You know, if Kansas State's more talented than Texas, Texas is more talented than Oklahoma State. That's really, you know, what you saw this weekend.
Well, Texas has another Big 12 opponent, but it's not until Saturday against Oklahoma Sooners, so they only have 2 games left at home, 3 on the road. What do the Longhorns exactly have to do to secure Shaka Smart's 3rd March Madness bid in his 4 years in Austin?
They definitely have to win all their both their home games. They are 11-5 at home and only 1-5 on the road. That's not a recipe for success. So the 2 games you absolutely have to win is TCU and Oklahoma. Those are the 2 of the 3 worst teams in the Big 12. You have to get the easy wins when you can. Then they got Iowa State. That's going to be kind of a toss-up. It is at home. They played them close in Ames earlier this month, so that's one that can go either way. And then the other 2 games that are scheduled are Baylor and Texas Tech, both on the road. Those are games where it's not going to be easy to win that game. If they do win one of those games, I think they're in. But really, they just need to go 3-2. So win the 2 easy games, win the home game against Iowa State, and you can lose the 2 games to the better teams. I think they're still in.
Well, you never know with the Big 12 being as competitive as it is. So many games seem like a coin flip. But we are approaching the tourney, and you want more tourney talk? Well, you can almost taste the March Madness in the air right now. So when we come back, we will flip the bracket to the women's side. Hello and welcome back to the show. We're here to talk about the events which transpired on the hardwood in Austin this Sunday evening. Kansas State returned to the Irwin Center, but this time it was a clash with Karen Aston and the women's team, which ranked number 15. Let's take it away at the drum. It was Breast Cancer Awareness Night at the Texas Longhorns matchup with the Kansas State Wildcats, and the Longhorns were feeling it from beyond the arc early as Destiny Littleton sinks that triple. Danny Williams, the former Texas A&M transfer, she gets it in too, and the Longhorns look good in the first quarter. Littleton once again from downtown. Kansas State would have their moments though. Lots of points in the paint for the Wildcats who get the easy bucket there, and now from downtown, Kansas State makes their move. Texas this time showing some miscues as the Wildcats would come back in the second quarter, but Destiny Littleton hits it from the corner. She would be 3 of 6 from threes and lead the team with 16 points as Kansas State responds. Littleton with the fake turnaround jumper sinks it. What a move by Destiny Littleton. Kansas State answers once again with an easy layup, and it is halftime with the Wildcats ahead of the number 15 Longhorns by 1. In the second half, see Danny Williams, Luka Doncic step back, sinks that triple. She would have 4 threes on the night and 14 points. There we get the hockey assist all the way to Charlie Collier, but Kansas State hits the 3 to answer back. Kansas State once again from beyond the arc. They would be 10 of 23 from there. And to end the third quarter, Kayla Goff sinks the free throw jumper. Kansas State just trails by 1, but the fourth quarter would be all Wildcats as they open from beyond the arc and they close by the basket. And Texas is unable to answer offensively, losing to Kansas State 69-60. The Longhorns drop to number 19 in the AP poll on Monday.
For more on this game, let's send it back down to the
State,
Irwin Center where our very own Marcus Risen has more.
After losing to Kansas State by 18 points earlier this season, The Longhorns used their Shoot for
What
a
is
Care
it?
game against cancer on Sunday evening as a chance of revenge against the Wildcats. Unfortunately, the same result but by a lesser margin was the outcome at the Frank Irwin Center as they lost 69-60. With this loss, Texas goes 0-2 against the Wildcats on the season, and Coach Karen Aston believes that the Longhorns' struggles against the Kansas State zone defense played a huge part.
Well, I think the zone is obviously a problem for us, but I think on the flip side of that, they scored 69 points. They scored 20 more than that almost. Well, they did in Manhattan. So obviously we have a trouble guarding their actions. There's no question about that. And I mean, I thought we prepared well. But again, those actions are going to continue to happen over and over in the game, and you have to guard them the whole game. You can't pick and choose when you want to guard them.
After a hot start from Destiny Littleton in the first half, where she scored more than half of her team's points, she slowed down heavily in the second half.
Really, I just think it's not about me. You know, it's about a team effort. And so, you know, I'm not that type of player at all. And so, you know, I try to look for my teammates and, you know, get them involved because at the end of the day, one cannot beat five.
After a tremendous start to the third quarter, in which they led at one point by 14 points, the Wildcats stormed back with a barrage of three-pointers, and the Longhorns only led by one heading into the fourth quarter. Aston was asked if the loss was concerning, as they have now been swept by the unranked Wildcats this season.
It's worrisome to me. Very. Just because we were at home, we had a 14-point lead, and we didn't buckle down enough to keep the lead. And again, I don't ever want to take anything away from an opponent, and they continued to play hard. They continued to compete. They made shots, and you know, you have to give them some credit for that. They were more competitive than we were in the fourth quarter, and that is worrisome to me, I will admit.
The Longhorns must bounce back quickly as they play Texas Tech on Saturday and have a chance to avenge their loss last week to the #1 ranked Baylor Bears again on Monday. From TSTV Sports, I'm Marcus Rising.
We now welcome in women's basketball analyst Robert Trevino. And Robert, the Horns lose by 9 at home to Kansas State, their biggest loss at home since back in December when they got killed by Mississippi State. So what went wrong for the Horns in this game?
Well, not much went right for the Horns in this one. The shooting percentage was way down. It was at 45.6% before the game, but they shot 21 for 63 from the field. Turnovers also played a key part. They average about 16 a game, and their differential is -2, something that they really have to work on. They had 13 actually below their average on Sunday. And in terms of their play specifically to Kansas State, they didn't limit their stars. Kayla Goth, who came in averaging 15 on the season, had 12.5. And Peyton Williams, who was averaging 15 per game, they allowed to score 13. So they didn't limit any of their stars, and therefore Kansas State pretty much put up what they were averaging for the season, which was enough to take down the Horns.
Yeah, they didn't do a good job of limiting turnovers, and that was big. This is the Horns' 4th loss in conference, 6th on the season. They now sit 3.5 games back of Baylor for first place in the Big 12. So just how big is the impact of this loss for Texas?
Well, it means that because Texas still has Baylor and Iowa State, two big-time schools that they're not going to be able to just walk in and win on. This loss was just one that the Horns could not afford. So being 3.5 games back with just 4 games left to play means that they need massive help from Baylor, and that winning the Big 12 is pretty much improbable, if not impossible. However, morally, the team needs a big win over Texas Tech, who they play next, to boost that team and prepare for the Big 12 and NCAA tourneys. Maybe they can get on a run. They need to limit the other team's points. They're holding teams to 61 on average, which would be typically enough for them to win, so they produce 60 points in the loss to K-State. If they hold their teams to 61, they're able to remain in the game, but when they let K-State haul off and score 69 on them, it just becomes that much harder to win.
Yeah, you bring up the tough games. 3 of their next 4 games that they have left in the season against teams with 18 or more wins, including #1 Baylor on the road. Certainly going to be tough. So what needs to change for Texas to be able to win these games and go into the tournament with some momentum?
Well, I spoke about it earlier. They definitely need to cut those turnovers, averaging 16.1 per game. That's been a problem all year. So you have to decrease those mistakes made. You're giving those teams an extra possession. And when you're playing Baylor, when you're coming up against Kalani Brown, who's averaging 16 points per game, they don't need an extra opportunity. And so to give them that extra opportunity is a mistake. Next, they have to limit team stars. We talked about it earlier. Iowa State also has Bridget Carlton, who's averaging 21.3 points per game. They need to prepare for the postseason. You have to be able to limit the team's stars. They have a great opportunity at home against the one team of those four that does not have 18 wins. Texas Tech is coming in 12-13 with only 3 conference wins. So they have a great opportunity to come in and get a nice win and pretty much work on all of those things that they're going to have to, especially with Baylor and Iowa State on the slate.
Yeah, well, thanks, Robert. Always great to have you on the show. When we return, Eric Goodman and Jaxie Pigeon are going to take us through all the action that went on during NBA All-Star Weekend. Stick around. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back into College Press Box. This past weekend, the NBA's brightest stars took center stage for All-Star Weekend in Charlotte, North Carolina, battling it out for pride, bragging rights, and a $100,000 winner's check. For highlights and analysis from the weekend, let's send it over to Eric Goodman and Jaxie Pigeon with more.
Thanks, Thomas. The league's best players from the East and West conferences came together this past Sunday at Spectrum Center in Charlotte to compete in the 68th NBA All-Star Game. This year's matchup was Team LeBron versus Team Giannis. This was the second year that the 2 top All-Star vote getters got to pick their respective teams. Like every year, the game started out as a skills showcase for the best players in the world. Sometimes it looked as if it was a slam dunk contest, and at others, 3-point competition. Team Giannis came out fired up in the first half, but Team LeBron came in strong in the second half. The team came back from a 20-point deficit in the second half of the game to win. Team LeBron had a 46-point fourth quarter. It took some time for the teams to actually start getting competitive, but once they did, it was lights out on both sides. There really was no defense played, however, there was a lot of offense and alley-oops. Giannis Antetokounmpo, also known as the Greek Freak, was the first-time captain and led all scorers with an impressive 38 points for the night. The final score of this year's All-Star Game was Team LeBron 178 and Team Giannis 164. Team LeBron has now won back-to-back All-Star Games.
And one new tradition in this year's All-Star Game that I think we can all get behind is that 2 future Hall of Famers, Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade, were special additions to the All-Star rosters. Wade and Dirk now combined for 27 All-Star Game appearances between the 2 of them and 4 NBA championships. In his final All-Star Game appearance, Wade posted 7 points and 4 assists for his former teammate LeBron James's team, while Dirk added 3 of his iconic rainbow three-pointers, what was definitely one of my favorite parts of the game, for Team Giannis.
Former Longhorn Kevin Durant won All-Star Game MVP, playing an integral role in Team LeBron's comeback. He shot 10 for 15 from the field and 6 for 9 from the three-point line, with a total of 31 points for the game. He also had 7 rebounds and 2 blocks. It was his second NBA All-Star Game MVP award, winning his first in the 2012 All-Star Game in Orlando. So, Eric, people have been debating whether the game is competitive enough. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, I mean, you watch the game and the players are not giving 100% like you would see on a given NBA night, especially not if it was a playoff game or anything. And you would, in theory, love to see these guys go full on, the most talented basketball players in the world, giving it everything for going for a big win. But when you think about what the All-Star Game is supposed to be, it's supposed to be a showcase of these guys' incredible talents, and we do see that. We see incredible alley-oops, great dunks, three-pointers from all parts of the gym, and I think it's still a very entertaining product, and it's an entertaining product without a big risk of injury. And think about it this way. One of these players goes out playing a competitive game and ends up tearing an ACL or a devastating injury that derails not just that player's season, but their whole team's season. I think you would have that player never play in an All-Star Game again. I think you'd have NBA players sit out the game like you see in the NFL Pro Bowl, and none of us want to see that. So I think the All-Star Game is what it is, and it's an entertaining product, and I think it's here to stay the way it is, as it should be.
All right, Eric. Looks like there's going to be a great second half of the NBA season ahead. Back to you guys.
And when we come back, we will review what we have coming up this week in Longhorn sports. You won't want to miss it. Hi, welcome once more. It is time to rehash this eventful week in Texas Longhorn sports, starting on the diamond. Texas softball enjoyed a successful week in the Sunshine State, winning 3 out of 4 games in an invitational tourney in Clearwater, Florida. Captained by new head coach Mike White, the Longhorns run-rolled Cal 10-0 before sliding past FAU. Then the team stumbled to number 7 LSU, but Texas rebounded against quality SEC competition, edging out number 18 Kentucky 4-3 to conclude the weekend.
Over the weekend, Texas women's tennis competed in the ITA National Indoor Team Championships in Seattle, Washington. On Friday, the team swept 12th-ranked Northwestern and moved on to the quarterfinals on Saturday. In the quarterfinals, they would lose 4-3 to the number 1 ranked Stanford Cardinal. The Longhorns returned to action when they traveled to Houston to face Rice on Sunday, February 24th.
Staying on tennis, but in the men's side, the Texas Longhorns reached the semifinals of the ITA Indoor National Championship in Chicago, but the team's undefeated dual match play streak finally came to a close. Texas was shut out by number 2 Ohio State 4-0 to fall to 11-1 on the season. However, there were plenty of positives to take away from the weekend, including the Longhorns' 4-0 sweep over USC, which led them to the semifinal round for just the second time in program history.
Let's head back over to the Diamond for some Texas baseball. They headed to Lafayette, Louisiana for a 3-day series with the Ragin' Cajuns. On Friday, right fielder Austin Todd provided the go-ahead double in the 10th inning as the Longhorns would go on to win 3-1. On Saturday, the Longhorns withstood a late run from the Ragin' Cajuns, winning 6-5 and clinching a series win. On Sunday, the Longhorns' offense came up just short, losing 8-6 to the Cajuns. Sophomore pitcher Bryce Elder was named Big 12 Pitcher of the Week after throwing 9 strikeouts and only allowing 1 run on 4 hits in 8 innings of play in Friday's game.
Lots of Longhorn action in sports this week, starting with women's golf. They will play at the All-State Sugar Bowl Tuesday. No word if Bevo and Uga plan to make it this time. And then we have the track and field Big 12 Championship on Friday before women's basketball will play Texas Tech on Saturday. You can catch that one at 11 on LHN. Then men's basketball finally ends their respite with Oklahoma on Saturday at 11 on ESPNU. And to conclude Longhorn sports, both softball and baseball will be in action on Sunday.
Well, that's all we have tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday night at 9 o'clock for our sister show, College Crossfire, hosted by Jonathan Polasek. For everyone in studio and Master Control, I'm Thomas Fitch.
And I'm Steve Helwick.
Have a good night.